Welcome back to Growing in the Garden State. My name is Tony, and I am one of the team members that's been given the opportunity to utilize Drumthwacket, the historic New Jersey governor's mansion, as a teaching ground to help ensure that the people of New Jersey know how to grow and raise their own food. Now, earlier in our series, we started things from seed. We planted plugs and plant starts, and we've watched them grow all the way now till August, where we've got tomatoes, juicy tomatoes on the vine, peppers and garlic, and all sorts of wonderful things have been happening. So I would like to bring you along. Let's go to Drumthwacket and see what's growing on.
So, welcome back to Drumthwacket, everyone. And we're going to start off by showing you a little bit of thinning of the strawberries by cutting the runners off. So, as you can see, this strawberry patch, which we planted in the spring, is quite filled in now. Probably a little bit too much filled in, but that's all right. We'll just deal with it the way it is. And the reason it gets filled in is because each plant puts out at least one, and often up to probably a half a dozen or more, what I call runners. And this is actually a new strawberry plant. And as you see, this strawberry plant, even before it's rooted in the ground, has put up another one. So if we don't control these, we're going to end up with too many strawberry plants in here that are all going to grow too small, and we just won't get the fruit production. So I am going to cut this back as far as I can. And now, because this is a plant, we can plant this again. It's a little late in the year to get the same type of patch we got here, but we can plant it as probably an annual. They would just go closer together. I think we probably spaced these about 18 inches apart when we planted in here, but these can go about a foot apart, and we probably will get a small crop next spring. And from there on, we can let that one grow and get bigger and fill in like this. So because we're on the edge of a driveway here, it's pretty easy right now. I'm just going to cut all these off. They're heading towards the driveway. They're not going to do any good, but I don't want them to stay here because I want that nutrition that's in the soil to go into the plants that are already there, making them bigger and more likely to produce more strawberries next year. So again, I'm just going to cut these off. Now, I can't say we've done a great job of keeping the runners in check in the middle. So if I look in here, I see some that are just kind of sitting there. So right now, this patch is thick enough that I don't need any of those. And if I see some that are just barely about to root, I'm going to get rid of those too, just to give ourselves a little bit more, give a little more space to the ones that are already established, and let them actually grow bigger. Now, if I had done this, like say every other week, you probably would end up with plants. If you get that light in there, that's a large plant. It's going to produce good strawberries. These will all produce strawberries, but that's the way we want to get them. And you can do that by thinning the runners. Strawberries just have this tendency to keep producing runners, and the runners will produce the runners, and so it can get to be a jungle in here. And the jungle will produce fruit. You're just going to get better fruit if you get them all to that size.
How many runner plants do you think you get off of like each strawberry plant?
Well, I don't remember how many plants we put in here originally, but it looks like the original plants have produced runners, which have produced runners. And produced runners.
The gift that keeps giving.
24 original plants.
Oh, 24, okay. Yeah. And there's probably 150 in here now.
Right.
And I probably cut out 50 today. If you're going to plant them out, you want to try to find ones that have a pretty good root system, as you can see right there. Most of these don't have quite as big a root system, but this is not. This is what you call the crown, and it's not real distinctive when they're young like this, but there's a growing point that's right in the right in the middle there. So I don't want to bury that growing point because the plant will rot. So what I want to do, this is just a little bit of a demonstration pot, and I want to bury those roots. Sometimes when there's a lot of roots like this, there's a few that might stick up above the ground, and that's not a good idea. That's not check it to make sure there aren't any, because some of those roots sticking up above the ground can actually dry the plant out from the area. Now, you probably could grow this through the fall. This time of year in August, it's not the ideal time to plant strawberries, but some people do, and they do so in much closer spacing. If I were to put some of these other runners out, I would put them about 8 inches apart, and some people this time of year also use black plastic, so they'll put it down in black plastic, punch a hole about 8 inches, and grow that as an annual crop. So the next spring, they would produce strawberries.
So we're back here in the main garden, where, as you know from our previous session, we had some deer intrusion. So we have a little bit more space right now, and what we're going to do is just scuffle hoe along our beet seedlings here to put in another seeding of a greens mix, right? So the baby lettuces, and then along the beans where we have some additional space also, same thing, and we're going to put in hikori turnips. Those are a pretty quick turnaround, 38 days to maturity, so we have plenty of time to get a crop of that in. Okay, so these are the turnip seeds. Again, these are in the brassica family. They look very similar to kale seeds, cabbage seeds, all of that, because they are in the same family. These we're going to be planting 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch deep. So I've prepared just a shallow little trench here, and I'm going to just sprinkle them, kind of using the technique of rolling my fingers together as I move my hand back along this trench. You can be very precise in your spacing, but I prefer guaranteeing a good germination and then thinning once things have produced their first true leaves. You can always use your baby turnip greens as an addition to salad mix, so you're never really wasting anything by overseeding when you can use the fresh growth. And then we're just going to cover them up very gently. So that'll be about a quarter of an inch to 1/2 inch of soil. And then I always like to just tamp it down a bit so that when we do water, the soil doesn't just drift away. So today, which is the second day of August, we are going to do our last planting of some winter squash. This is about as late in the season as we'll do it, but we should still be able to get a pretty good crop. Today we have starts for butternut squash as well as some acorn squash. We're going to do a pretty thick planting here. They will really fill in. But again, I'm going to dig just a hole. We've kind of raked up the soil a bit so that it's nice and fluffy versus compact. That'll allow the roots to more quickly acclimate. You can see there's not really any root binding, so this is a perfect time to plant them. Squash, anything in the cucurbit family, really doesn't like its roots disturbed much, so we don't want to really mess with the roots as we transplant. Cover that right up to these little cotyledons, tamp it down a bit, and then we'll move on to the next plant. The soil is moist right now, but we will give them just a little bit of watering in. It's going to be another beautiful sunny day, so it'll give them that little bit of water that they need to really establish. So I want to talk just briefly about the difference between cotyledons, which are these first, they're not true leaves, but they're the first kind of rounded growth that will come from the germinated seed. So that is, if you transplant when it just has cotyledons, that's a bit too soon. So what you want is really when plants have at least their first 2 true leaves. So you can see this is the first one, right? It's the largest. Then here, it's a vine, so it's gonna kind of continue going out. But when we transplant, we wanna go right up to those cotyledons so that it'll allow for some stability in the soil there.
All right, well, that just about wraps up our episode for this month. I hope you are absorbing and learning wonderful information, and hopefully you've got a garden going someplace with some delicious food that's, been tantalizing your tongue with deliciousness. So I'd like to prepare you something very serious. Next month is September. September is kind of this weird month where it's like the end of summer and the beginning of autumn. And in fact, it's the time when we have the equinox, when there's an equal amount of light as there is dark, or day and night. And that triggers a lot of internal information in the plant world, as well as animals, but we're really focusing on plants at this time. So anyhow, I'm really looking forward to exploring more with you next month in September. But until then, if you have any questions or you want to learn a little bit more about other topics, visit us at NOFA-NJ.org. And if you don't find what you're looking for there, reach out, shoot an email. Somebody will happily help you go down your rabbit hole and explore whatever it is that you're exploring. And our community really loves helping and including more people into this community of growing. One might say we like to grow our community even. So anyhow, so check us out, NOFA-NJ.org. I'm so happy you've been joining us, and I will see you next month.